I knew when I loaded the old save file that Daisy would be there, but it was still a relief to see her. In addition to losing my progress towards going home, I also had to redo all of the shulker box organizing I had done in the previous save file, but it was worth it. I also had to set up another portal above the stronghold again. According to my calculations, even if I made another iceboat path in a straight line, traveling between spawn and the end portal would still take over half an hour. However, that is much less time than the overworld, so setting up another pathway at some point could be worthwhile, especially if Minecraft does get an end update soon. With that taken care of, I just had to wait for enough leather dropping mobs to spawn to make armor for Daisy, and finish sorting the shulker boxes. Before too long, we were ready to begin Attempt 2. I think Attempt 2 took slightly less time because I had the practice from the failed first attempt. On the plus side, we got to see these really cool looking mountains again. I didn't stop for every buried treasure map we passed, but I did get this one with Malohai. I can appreciate that the music discs are meant to be ultra rare, but I still wish we had some way to get all of them in peaceful mode. On the way home, we kept running into villages that had no villagers, which was a bit unsettling. I also can't tell if I've gotten better or worse at iceboating, but I did find a few more interesting locations. It might be cool to try to build something in these areas in the future, even if it's too far away from spawn to be a base. And of course I appreciated the parts of the world where world blending did weird things, like place ice next to a swamp. It seemed like a short time until we arrived at the dreaded location, but we were prepared this time. Also, did something happen to make underwater ruins appear on land more often? I repeatedly saw them in locations that made no sense, and I can't tell if it's just world blending doing that or something else. Speaking of looking at things, one of the advantages of traveling by boat is that you can look around at the terrain without it affecting where you're going. We even got to see one of those pillager outposts that somehow spawned in the middle of the ocean, so that was interesting. And there was a messed up ocean monument not too far afterwards. But finally, after hours of travel, we were reunited with Lily, Barry, Allium, and Dandelion. We were all together and almost home. I had missed our crew, but I definitely didn't miss trying to get them into boats. I didn't miss dealing with the leads breaking either. But we reached our base in the flower forest. I checked on Tulip and the not tulips. They seemed to be doing alright in their pond, which was nice to see. Even before I started the first attempt to get back to spawn, I wondered where our crew should call home. Near the beginning of this journey, it made sense that my group of flowers would call a flower forest home. But as I looked around at the base I had built while preparing for the bulk of our journey, I realized that, as nice and vibrant as it wasn't meant to be our crew's permanent home. I could have made a nice area for Daisy to roam around in, but I thought of the 3 white sheep from the beginning of this journey. Surely Daisy would want to see them again, and I didn't think it was right to leave Lily, Barry, Allium, and Dandelion behind while we went back to make the map wall. So, as much as I liked this base, our crew needed a new spot to call home. I just needed to grab some items I had left behind first. Oh, and there was one other thing I needed to take care of that I probably should have done before we left for the end portal. Hopefully the librarian will live a much more fulfilling life now that they're no longer trapped. Whoops. Anyway, we continued on, and there it was, the first house for this series. Could it have looked better? Possibly. And that's why it also would not be our permanent home. However, I did need to pick up the 3 white sheep. Maybe I didn't use their wool to make beds for setting my respawn point along the journey like I thought I would, but I did use some wool to build a path up to the end gateway, and they had kept Daisy and I company at the beginning of this journey. With all 9 of us together, the only thing left to complete our journey was to make the map wall on the spawn island. Some XP! If there was any doubt before, this is definitely spawn. After retrieving the shulker boxes I had used to collect the maps, I decided to sort the shulker boxes filled with End City materials. Now that it would be easier to find exactly which blocks I wanted, I began construction at the northernmost point of the island. I was a little concerned that the map wall would end up going beyond the spawn map, but it ended up being just within the boundaries. Placing the maps wasn't that difficult, but it did take a while. I know I'm still not used to the idea of having shulker boxes because for most of the project, I just left all of them near the boats with the flower crew, so I kept running back and forth for blocks and maps. I also had to grow oak trees because item frames require a lot of sticks. I really should have brought some spruce saplings with me, but it was too late then. Also, I knew 200,000 blocks is a long way to travel, but putting this map all together really helped to put into perspective just how massive it was. But finally, all of the maps were in place, including the ones from the detour to the buried treasure. I just had to fill in the rest of the board with normal blocks. I guess technically I didn't have to, but I thought making the wall more square would help. In an attempt to make viewing the map wall easier in survival, I added a glass stairway that mostly followed the path of the maps. Mining the entire end city had left me with a lot of magenta glass. In an effort to conserve the limited end rods I had, I opted to later replace most of the supports with magenta stained glass panes. I'm pretty satisfied with the result. Unfortunately, I wasn't quite sure how to handle the beginning where there was a lot of vertical difference. If nothing else, I can always use my spyglass. However, I ran out of normal purpur blocks, so I had to use some stair blocks to finish up the wall. Fortunately, I don't think I'll spend much time looking at the back of this wall. But then I ran out of purpur stairs, so I had to finish the wall using purpur pillars. Again, I don't think I'll spend much time at spawn looking at the map wall, so hopefully this won't be a major issue. Regardless, the map wall was finally done, even with the mismatch of blocks. Is it the prettiest thing I've built in survival? No, but it's probably the largest. I tried to clean up spawn by chopping down the remaining oak trees I had planted for sticks. I also made a copy of the spawn map. While I had saved Daisy, reunited the flower crew, and completed the map wall, things still didn't seem quite finished with this world. I didn't think our crew would be happy sitting in boats forever, and the spawn island was a bit too small for all of us to call home. So before I could call this series complete, I would still need to make a permanent home for all of us. And while testing things in a creative copy of this world, I found an island that would be just perfect for that. It had a village conveniently nearby, as well as some interesting looking cliffs in the background. I just needed to turn this island into a home. Until next time, take care.